I want you to picture something for me. You're sitting in a conference room nodding through a quarterly sales presentation when your phone vibrates. It's your wife. You almost ignore it because she never calls during work hours, but something, instinct maybe, makes you step outside and answer. And for the next 4 minutes and 37 seconds, you hear sounds that will replay in your head every single day for the rest of your life. That's how my marriage ended. Or rather, how it should have ended. But I'm still here, in this house, sleeping in a guest room that smells like old paint, trapped in a life that became my prison the moment I answered that call. My name is David, and 3 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I was 39, pulling in 6 figures as a senior account manager at a tech firm. My wife, Jennifer, was 37, a former marketing executive who'd stepped back from her career when our twins were born. We had 2 beautiful 5-year-old boys, Mason and Tyler, and we lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in a suburb where the school district was rated 9 out of 10. The kind of place where you wave to your neighbors and nobody locks their doors during the day. Jennifer had been talking about going back to work, getting back into the professional world now that the boys were in kindergarten. But the logistics were complicated. Her old contacts had moved on. The marketing landscape had changed. And honestly, our lives were already chaotic enough with 2 energetic kids who seemed determined to destroy every piece of furniture we owned. That's when Jennifer suggested we hire an au pair. It would be perfect, she said one night over wine. Live-in help, someone young and energetic who can handle the boys' schedule. It's cheaper than full-time daycare, and I'd have the flexibility to take meetings, maybe start freelancing. I agreed. It made sense on paper. We converted the finished basement into a private suite, bedroom, bathroom, small sitting area. We went through an agency, did background checks, the whole 9 yards. And that's how we met Luca. Luca was 23, from Sweden, with one of those effortlessly athletic builds and dirty blonde hair that looked like he'd just walked off a beach. He was studying early childhood education back home and wanted to spend a year in the States improving his English and experiencing American culture. He had impeccable references, a clean record, and an easy smile that made him immediately likable. The boys loved him instantly. He was like the cool older brother they never had, always ready to play soccer, build elaborate Lego cities, or run around the backyard pretending to be dinosaurs. Jennifer loved him too, but I told myself it was just appreciation. She'd finally found reliable help. She started taking freelance consulting gigs, going to networking events, getting her confidence back. Luca handled pickup and drop-off, made the boys healthy snacks, even started teaching them basic Swedish phrases. He was perfect. Too perfect, I sometimes thought, but I pushed that feeling down. Then I started noticing small things that didn't quite add up, little cracks in the perfect picture we'd built. The first thing was Jennifer's appearance. She started dressing differently around the house. Not dramatically, but noticeably. She'd always been attractive, but now she was wearing fitted yoga pants even when she wasn't working out, leaving an extra button undone on her blouses. She started wearing this perfume she'd never worn before, something expensive I hadn't bought her. When I mentioned it, she said she was just feeling better about herself, more confident now that she was working again. Then there was her phone. Jennifer had never been secretive with her phone before, but suddenly, it had a new passcode I didn't know. She'd take it with her everywhere, to the bathroom, to the laundry room, even just to get a glass of water. If it buzzed while we were watching TV, she'd glance at it with this little smile, then flip it face down without explaining. The boys mentioned that Mommy and Luca had special meetings, sometimes when they were supposed to be napping. When I asked what that meant, Mason said they'd go to Mommy's office and close the door. They're probably just discussing schedule stuff, Jennifer said when I brought it up. You know how seriously Luca takes his responsibilities. I started paying more attention. Jennifer and Luca had inside jokes I wasn't part of. They'd exchange glances across the dinner table that lasted a second too long. Once, I came home early and heard laughter from the kitchen. Intimate laughter, the kind that stops abruptly when someone else enters the room. They were standing closer together than seemed necessary, and Jennifer's face was flushed. "We were just watching a funny video," she explained, but neither of them showed me their phones. The guest room in the basement where Luca lived was supposed to be his private space, but Jennifer started finding reasons to go down there, taking him fresh towels, checking if he needed anything. Once I found her coming up from the basement at 10 at night, saying she'd been helping him with his resume for grad school applications. But every time I felt suspicious, Jennifer would do something to make me feel crazy for doubting her. "David, you're being paranoid," she'd say when I questioned her. "Luca is an employee. He's practically a kid. What do you think is happening?" And she was convincing. She'd initiate sex more often, tell me she loved me, plan date nights. We'd go out to nice restaurants, and she'd hold my hand across the table and talk about our future, about taking a family trip to Europe, maybe even having another baby. She painted such a vivid picture of our happy family that I convinced myself I was manufacturing problems where none existed. Luca, too, was the model of propriety. He called me Mr. Harrison, asked my advice on everything from car maintenance to career planning. He joined me for beers during football games and seemed genuinely interested in becoming friends. He never overstepped, never made me feel uncomfortable. If anything, he went out of his way to include me, to position himself as part of our family unit. "Your wife is amazing," he told me once while we were grilling burgers. "You're very lucky. She's so smart and capable. The boys are lucky too." It was exactly what I wanted to hear. Validation that Jennifer was thriving, that our family was strong, that bringing Luca into our home had been the right decision. I stopped checking her phone when she left it unattended. I stopped asking questions about her schedule. I chose to trust. That trust lasted exactly 6 more weeks, until the afternoon my phone rang during the quarterly sales meeting. It was a Wednesday, 2:30 in the afternoon. I was in the conference room with 11 other people, half listening to Karen from Analytics Drone on about conversion metrics. My phone vibrated in my pocket, Jennifer calling. That was odd. She knew I was in meetings all afternoon. I almost silenced it, but something made me excuse myself and step into the hallway. "Hello? Nothing. Just background noise." A butt dial, I thought. I was about to hang up when I heard Jennifer's voice, distant but unmistakable. "We don't have much time. They'll be back from the park soon." A male voice responded. "Luca, I know. God, I've been thinking about this all morning." I stood frozen in that hallway, the phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. The sounds that followed are burned into my memory. Movement, breathing. Jennifer's voice saying things I'd never heard her say, not in 12 years of marriage. Luca responding in ways that made it clear this wasn't their first time. They spoke in shorthand, with familiarity, with the kind of ease that only comes from repetition. They talked about yesterday, about last week when I was traveling for work, about being careful, about how David never suspects anything. They talked about me like I was a problem to be managed, an obstacle to navigate around. Jennifer actually laughed when Luca said something about how I'd complimented his work with the boys at dinner the night before. "He's so clueless," she said. It's almost sad. The call lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. I know because I checked afterward, unable to believe what I'd heard, needing to verify that it had really happened. I stood in that corporate hallway under fluorescent lights, listening to my wife have sex with the 23-year-old we'd welcomed into our home, and I felt my entire life collapse in real time. When it ended, when there was silence except for quiet talking I couldn't make out, I hung up. My hands were shaking. I went to the bathroom and threw up. But here's the thing nobody tells you about these moments. The discovery isn't the worst part. What came next was worse. I didn't go home. Immediately. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I drove around for 2 hours, then sat in a parking lot and went through our finances with cold, analytical precision. What I found made me physically ill all over again. We were house poor, the colonial that impressed the neighbors. We'd stretched to afford it. I'd pushed for it because I wanted my kids to grow up somewhere nice, somewhere safe. The mortgage was massive. We had car payments, credit card debt from Jennifer's business wardrobe refresh, student loans that wouldn't be forgiven for another decade. My salary was good, but it barely covered everything. We lived paycheck to paycheck in a 4-bedroom house with granite countertops and crown molding. If I divorced Jennifer, I'd be paying child support and likely alimony. She'd given up her career for the kids. Any court would see that. I'd be covering most of the family expenses while also paying for a separate apartment. I did the math. I'd be living in a studio, eating ramen, unable to afford to take my sons anywhere or buy them anything beyond the basics. And the custody battle would be vicious. Jennifer was the primary caregiver. She'd been home with the boys for 5 years. She had documentation, daily routines, school pickup records. I traveled for work sometimes. I worked long hours. I could already hear her lawyer painting me as the absent father. Best case scenario? I'd get every other weekend and Wednesday nights. That's when I opened my laptop and started searching. I found her text messages backed up to the cloud. We shared an account. Months of conversations with Luca. Explicit photos. Plans coordinated around my schedule. They'd been sleeping together for almost 8 months, since 2 months after he'd moved in. My wife had been having an affair with the au pair while I paid his salary. I found something else too. A recording feature Jennifer didn't know was active on the security camera in our bedroom. A baby monitor we'd never fully deactivated. 3 videos, automatically saved to cloud storage. All the evidence I needed. I sat in that parking lot until the sky turned dark, and I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. Remember at the beginning when I asked you to picture answering that call? Here's what I didn't tell you. That was 11 months ago. I'm still living in the same house. Jennifer is still my wife. Luca is gone, but the marriage remains. When I came home that night, Jennifer was giving the boys their bath. She smiled at me like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been in bed with another man 6 hours earlier. I waited until the boys were asleep. Then I sat her down and played the audio from the butt dial. I watched her face go through every emotion: shock, fear, shame, defiance, and finally, desperation. She cried. She begged. She said it meant nothing, that she'd made a terrible mistake, that she loved me and wanted to save our marriage. She said all the things I'd heard about in stories like these. I let her finish. Then I showed her the text messages, the cloud recordings, the evidence, and I told her exactly what was going to happen. Luca would be gone by morning. She would tell him never to contact her again, or I'd send everything to his university and the au pair agency, destroying his career before it started. He left at 6 a.m. the next day, and I never saw him again. Jennifer would stay married to me. We would present a unified front to the boys, to our families, to our neighbors. She would never mention divorce, never threaten to leave, never step out of line again. In exchange, I wouldn't file for divorce and drag her through a custody battle where these recordings would become public record. I wouldn't destroy her relationship with her parents, her friends, her reputation. I wouldn't tell everyone she'd fucked the babysitter while her husband paid for it. "You want to stay married?" she'd asked, confused. "I want my sons every day," I said. "I want to live in the same house as them, see them every morning, put them to bed every night. I want their childhood to be stable and whole. And you're going to help me give them that." She agreed. What choice did she have? The first night, I moved into the guest room, the same room where Luca had lived. There's a particular cruelty in that, I suppose, but I barely register it anymore. Jennifer sleeps in our bedroom. I sleep here, in a room that still faintly smells like him. We co-parent efficiently. We attend the boys' school functions together, smiling in photos that will be posted to social media. We host family dinners where her parents comment on how strong our marriage is. We never touch. We barely speak, unless it's about the kids, or the house, or logistics. The only intimacy we share is the mutual understanding that we're both prisoners of the choice we made. I've had 11 months to think about what happened, to analyze the mechanics of my own destruction. Here's what I've learned. First, trust without verification is negligence. I brought a stranger into my home and gave him access to everything I cared about, my wife, my children, my private space, because he had good references and a friendly smile. I didn't monitor, didn't question, didn't protect what was mine. When the red flags appeared, I explained them away because believing the lie was more comfortable than confronting the truth. Every man who gets cheated on thinks it won't happen to him. That confidence is exactly what makes it possible. Second, the perfect setup for betrayal is the one that looks most innocent. An au pair isn't a threat the way a coworker or an ex-boyfriend is. He was there to help. He was supervised. He was practically a child. That's what made him so dangerous. Jennifer could spend hours alone with him every day, could develop intimacy under the cover of logistics and childcare, could rationalize the progression because it happened gradually in a space I'd explicitly trusted. The same qualities that made Luca ideal for the job, young, energetic, living in our home, made him ideal for an affair. Third, and this is the one that keeps me awake at night, justice and revenge are luxuries that only free men can afford. The moment I became a father, my options narrowed. Every choice I make now is filtered through the lens of what's best for Mason and Tyler. Divorcing their mother might feel righteous, might give me satisfaction, might let me start fresh with someone who won't betray me. But it would split their childhood in half. They'd become kids who pack bags on Friday afternoons, who have 2 bedrooms and 2 sets of rules, who grow up understanding that families break. I couldn't do that to them. So instead, I'm sacrificing my own happiness, my chance at love, at trust, at feeling anything other than numb so they can have stability. That's what being a father means. You take the bullet so they don't have to. The irony is that I thought I was making a choice that night, but really the choice was already made for me years ago. It's Tuesday night, and I'm sitting in this guest room writing this out because someone suggested it might be therapeutic. Through the ceiling, I can hear Jennifer putting the boys to bed. She's reading them a story, doing the voices they love, being a perfect mother. In the morning, we'll have breakfast together, like a family. I'll make pancakes, she'll pack lunches. The boys will argue about whose turn it is to feed the dog. We'll look like any other suburban family starting another day. But I'll go to work carrying the weight of knowing I'm living a lie. I'll sit in meetings and smile at colleagues who think I have it all together. I'll come home to a house I can't afford to leave, to a woman I can't stand to look at, to a life that's simultaneously mine and completely foreign. I'll kiss my sons goodnight and feel grateful I get to do that. And then I'll close the door to this guest room and feel the walls close in. The mortgage is due next week. Mason needs braces soon. Tyler wants to join travel soccer. Jennifer's car needs new tires. We're locked in a financial death grip where neither of us can afford to leave without destroying the boys' stability. She knows it. I know it. That knowledge sits between us at every dinner, every school concert, every moment we're forced to pretend this is a marriage instead of a hostage situation. Some nights, I lie here and imagine what my life would be like if I'd made a different choice. If I'd walked away, accepted the financial ruin and limited custody, started over alone. I could date again. I could eventually trust again. I could live in a studio apartment and eat cheap food and be genuinely, authentically happy. Or would I? Would I lie awake in that studio, knowing my boys were growing up without me there? Knowing I'd missed dinner and bedtime and lazy Sunday mornings? Knowing I'd chosen my pride over their childhood? Would that freedom actually feel like freedom? Or would it be its own kind of prison? Jennifer broke our marriage. I chose to stay in its ruins. Which of us made the worst decision? I still don't know. What I do know is that I'm 39 years old, sleeping in a room where my wife's lover used to live, counting down the years until my sons are old enough that divorce won't devastate them. I'm a prisoner serving a sentence with no clear end date, no possibility of parole, no hope that good behavior will set me free. This is my life now. I chose it with open eyes, weighing the options and picking the least destructive path forward. So here's my question for you, the one I ask myself every single night. How do you keep going when you've already lost everything that mattered, but you're not allowed to leave? When staying is torture and leaving is impossible. When the bars of your prison are made of love for your children and held in place by money you don't have and circumstances you can't change. I don't have an answer. I just have tomorrow morning and pancakes to make and a performance to continue. Maybe that's all any of us really have. Okay, that's it for this one. Alex here. I'm leaving this one up to you guys. What is your takeaway here? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget, if you want your story told on the channel, send it over to the email in the description. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story. Peace.